Hello, all, and welcome to this episode of the Game Plan Podcast by College Baseball Advisors. This is Wayne Mazzoni, your host, former college baseball coach, coach college baseball 1992 to 2022, current owner of College Baseball Advisors, where I help families navigate the craziness of the recruiting process. For more information about what I do, please visit my website, collegebaseballadvisor.com. On today's episode, we had Rob McCoy, head baseball coach at William and Mary. Just really an awesome conversation with a guy that I've known decently, but got to know really well on this call. Talked about his upbringing in Oregon, Eastern Oregon, and the journey that got him to junior college and then got him to Dakota Wesleyan for his remaining years of college, and just his journey to get into coaching, how he knew he wanted to do that from an early age, and his background coaching and getting his master's. He got his master's at UVA, started coaching high school JV, where he won one game in 2 years, then got the assistant job at volunteer job at James Madison, then took an assistant job at Niagara, and then took over that program for 16 years. The most enjoyable part of that talk was talking about how basically through working with Brian Kane, who's a really well-known mental game coach, really turned around the way he coached, the way he ran his program, and led to a lot of success at Niagara, which of course in turn led to getting the position at William and Mary, where he is now. We talked a lot about, of course, William and Mary, the university, the program, and what he looks for about how he finds recruits and what he's looking for in recruits. I'd like to mention that this podcast is made possible through the sponsorship of the World Baseball Coaches Convention, which takes place every year at the Mohegan Sun Casino. This year is January 15th to 17th, 2026, at this awesome venue, the Mohegan Sun Casino. The convention center is great with large speaking rooms, breakout rooms, a great area to talk with other coaches, a vendor area, a batting cage demonstration area, a live infield, a coaches social. It's a really awesome event. Go to baseballcoachesclinic.com and you can see the list of speakers and more information about the event, as well as to register. So without further delay, here is my talk with Rob McCoy, head baseball coach at William and Mary. All right, Rob, I'm very excited to talk to you. I love doing these because I feel in the modern world we're very scattered. It's hard to have deep conversations. So if it takes a 2025 podcast to connect with another guy to talk baseball, I'm happy to do it. So first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Um, as I do research for these, you can find a lot of stuff about people these days. So I know a lot of your history. What I don't know is where were you born and raised? So can we start with that? Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in a small Northeast Oregon town called Halfway, Oregon. Uh, it's about population 350, no stoplights, one restaurant, one store, actually two when I was growing up now. It's one. Uh, um, about 15 miles from Hell's Canyon from the Idaho border and about an hour south from Washington State. So up in the northeast corner.
Okay, so interestingly, actually, I think you're the first ever guy. I actually did chat GPT it and said, "Where's Coach Rob McCoy from?" And it did say Halfway, Oregon. But then I go, "Well, hold on. He went to college in Dakotas, which we'll get to." But so I personally absolutely love the Northwest region. Your area I haven't been to, but I've been to Washington State. I'm in Oregon. What was it like growing up there? Just let's forget, even we'll talk sports next, but what was that growing up experience like?
I mean, I loved it. It was I didn't know any different, so
Right.
I had nothing to compare it to. We grew up hunting and fishing. My dad was an outdoorsman. My mom was a teacher. Like our friends were our friends. Like you didn't get to pick friends, you got friends.
Right, right.
Like I said, we hunted, fish, we played sports. We were a big sports community. It was, the community went to every sporting event, and um, yeah, I mean, I loved it. Not many people make it out of there. They stick around. They're still there. A bunch of the kids I grew up with are still there. There's a fair number of us that made it out. Coincidentally enough, so the people that make it out, have made very interesting lives for themselves, which I find pretty fascinating. And to be honest with you, I never wanted to leave.
Right.
The short end of that story is I was never leaving the state of Oregon. I didn't even want to leave Eastern Oregon, and I ended up sort of deciding that I was going to go to school with a buddy of mine uh, in Western Oregon, and that would have gotten me out of the area. And then, unfortunately, after we like a month after we graduated, he passed away,
Oh,
um, and so that flipped my life completely upside down. And that was 4 years after, I think 3 years after my dad passed away. So in a short span, I went from, being probably an Eastern Oregon lifer to starting to make choices and take chances that I probably wouldn't have made otherwise. So that's why I'm here. I wouldn't have done those things had everything remained homeostatic, I guess you could say.
and do you go back to that area much? Have you been back recently?
No, I need to. My
Right.
mom would say I need to, but we went. The last time we went was 2021. We went during COVID, which was super sweet. We were sitting around in New York, not being able to do anything during COVID. So my
Right.
wife and I, with my kids and my dog, we rented a 26-foot motorhome, and I drove that thing all the way across the country. Uh, we made like 5 stops before we got to halfway, and then we parked it for 10 days, and then we drove back a different way than when we went. We were in a motorhome for 25 days. It was like, and my phone was off because we couldn't recruit, we couldn't do anything. So it was like the best. It was the best 25 days in a long time, man.
It's
Um,
funny. I because I have, two boys, and one got sports taken away in high school because of COVID, so that
oh
stunk.
yeah,
But
yeah,
as an adult, same thing. I was coaching then, and we had some responsibilities. But yes, life got really simple. And
yeah.
I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but on that trip, is that sucker hard to drive, or was there an easy learning curve to driving that thing?
I mean, it's kind of sink or swim, man. Like I've always fancied myself as a driver because since I was 16 years old, I've driven everywhere. I drove 50 miles one way to practice Legion baseball on my own at 16, so
Yeah,
with my team. So I've always driven. Uh it was fine until things started to go wrong with it. Because when you drive that far in it, like you're rattling, shaking. Like I had to fix the plumbing in it at one point during the trip. I had to. So it was. I mean, it was great though. I would enjoy it, again, but not hard to drive. It's kind of nice not being able to speed anywhere, you kind of
right.
slow down a little bit.
Yeah,
But we would get up every day. This is no lie. We'd get up every day and we'd kind of look at like where I thought I might be able to drive to that day at a normal pace, and
yeah,
then we would just shoot for that, and we would call up the motorhome park or the RV parks and get a reservation, stay the night, and then wake up the next day and do the same thing again.
yeah, yeah. That it's funny when I hear friends that are like professors, they take sabbaticals. Like no coach
Yeah,
takes. It would be nice, and if to recharge like that, unplug, and go take a trip like that. It's good for the soul.
it
No
was
question.
amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say it didn't help for sure.
right. Let's go back to that growing up. Obviously, let's talk sports now. I mean, clearly baseball was a part of your life. That region doesn't strike me as a baseball hotbed, but I could be completely wrong. Did you play all kinds of sports growing up, or is baseball the main focus?
Yeah, I actually did 4 sports growing up.
Wow.
I did football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and then track and baseball in the spring. And it was just what you did. There was
Right.
nothing else to do. So I wouldn't say it's a huge baseball area, but it's a huge sports area.
Right.
And
Right.
so, like I said, Baker City was the closest um, opportunity for me to play Legion baseball. So I'd play high school ball. And actually, the craziest part of it is we didn't even have a high school baseball team.
Wow.
And my class was, my class was a graduating class of 50.
Wow.
And the class below us or above us was 17, and the class below us was 20.
Oh my
And
God.
so when we got to high school, there was enough of us baseball players. There's the old guy. His name was Dan Lockett. He moved in from California, and baseball was his thing, and he wanted his grandson to play baseball, and so he started coaching us in Little League, and we all grew up with a love for baseball because he was provided that opportunity to be coached well, and so there was like, I don't know, 15 of us in one class that were all baseball all the time. And so when we got to high school, we started a baseball team, and they had a baseball team for, I think, the 4 years we were in high school. And we went to the state tournament 3 out of the 4 years.
Wow. Oh my God.
And then I think 4 of us or 5 of us ended up being college players, and nobody plays college anything out of there. Like there's probably less than 15 kids that ever come out of my high school to be college players. So it was a pretty special time to be there and be playing baseball.
So you had mentioned earlier for a while you thought, excuse me, for a while you thought you were going to go to Western Oregon with your buddy who passed.
Mhm.
So what then got you to this junior college that you went to?
It was a crazy story, like classic case of me being a small school and not knowing what I was doing. But when the thing in Western Oregon didn't work out, I was like, well, I'm going to go to Lewis Clark State College, which,
Yep.
if you know anything about
Oh yeah.
them, you don't just show up there.
No.
I'm like sort of embarrassed to even admit this, but if anybody's watching that can learn from me, then they can. But I made all the plans, I did everything. The coach was like, show up, try out. I showed up. Guy didn't even know my name, which listen, that happens to me too. So I'm not gonna, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then I started going, like, I picked out my classes, and I'm like, I told my mom, she was with me. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, this is a huge mistake. So I go home, and coincidentally enough, there was a guy that lived in Halfway who helped run the entire American Legion throughout the country. Um, and I went to him and I asked him, I said, do you have any contacts or anything? And he said, yeah, I can, I have contacts with the junior colleges in Western Oregon, so I'll make some calls for you. And that got me my first, opportunity at Clackamas with Robbie Robinson. And same thing, I show up there. I had no business being there, way over my head. In fact, they kept me because they said that, because I was from such a small area and hadn't really been coached well and whatnot, I made more improvement than anybody in the fall, but I was like starting from way down here.
Right.
So there was nowhere to go but up. So they kept me around for 2 years. And and then I got an opportunity out of there to go with 3 other teammates to Dakota Wesleyan, where my coach Adam Nices, he's now at Friends, but he won a lot of games at Dakota Wesleyan, and he just started recruiting junior college players from anywhere that would go to Dakota Wesleyan. It was a school of 700 kids in a town of 14,000, and the only thing to do there was play baseball and hunt pheasants, and those two things happened to be pretty high on my list. And it was the time of my life. My best friends to this day, I
Wow.
met there. My best friends in baseball. There's a couple coaches. There's a couple grounds guys. We're spread out all over the country. We still get together once every other couple years at the College World Series because we used to go to that when we were in college.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty special time.
So you know what's really striking me is obviously now, I work with kids on the recruiting process and families, and like your average kid is so stressed out with the recruiting process. And I'm thinking back to you, it's just like you kind of bounced around and then you went to Dakota Wesleyan because a few buddies went and the coach said, I'll take anyone to come. And here
Yep.
it was, it all worked out great. But like there's something to be said about maybe a halfway between, being so structured and then unstructured. But it's what a great story compared to, these kids in this modern world of recruiting, which I don't envy. It's a tough place to be,
I always the two things. Number one, I always believed in myself that I would find something and make it work. And I wasn't worried about how far away I was away from home or anything like that. And I tell kids all the time, and if you want to play college baseball, there is a program for you. You just have to be willing to do what it takes to go there. And I mean, the NAIA league that I played in, it's called the GPAC, Great Plains Athletic Conference. There's 13 schools in that conference that play college baseball. And, from Northwestern of Iowa to Concordia to Dakota Wesleyan to Mount Marty to, you name it, Midland, Doane, Dordt, all those schools like nobody's ever heard of especially if you're in the Northeast. And like I just think I was going to do whatever it took to play college baseball. I mean, I had Ivy League grades, but I grew up in Oregon. Ivy Leagues, nobody's recruiting out there, and
Right, right.
and so for me, I could have chosen the academic route and not played baseball, but I was going to play baseball. And so I went wherever I had to go to play baseball. I had two options out of junior college. Go back to Eastern Oregon University, where I was from, which that would have been a really favorable thing, or go to the middle of nowhere, South Dakota. I didn't even know where South Dakota was on a map before I literally started driving out there.
Wow.
And it was just, for me, I was just like, I'm going to make the best of this because I want to play college ball. And I started there for 2 years and met the best friends of my life. And so if you want it bad enough, there's a spot for you. Yeah, I was undersized. I mean, I was, I was like 5'9", 100 and like 55 pounds or something like that. And I wasn't good. Like I was good enough to play center field at Dakota Wesleyan, and hitting the nine hole. But man, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the entire world looking back.
Yeah, I love that's really well said and a really good message for a lot of people. Was it during that time in that journey as a player that you thought you would wind up coaching? Or did you get out and go, all right, what's next? Maybe I'll coach. How did that come about?
No, this has been intentional since I think my junior year in high school.
Wow.
Yeah, I knew pretty early on that I wasn't gonna be a pro. And so I wanted to play at the highest level I could. And um, my mom was a teacher, and she said, "Don't be a teacher." So, but I like mentoring and educating, and so I teach baseball. I am a teacher. I'm an educator, but I use the platform of baseball, and so. Uh, Everything I did in college was geared towards either playing or coaching. So I got a gen ed degree from junior college, and then I started actually in physical education at Dakota Wesleyan. I was like, I don't want to do this. This is it. So my advisor said, well, why don't you do, you can do anything, coach. Why don't you do like, sports and fitness and performance? Okay, cool. So then from there, I was done with that, but had a fifth year that I wanted to coach there. So I did a psychology double major in 1 year, um, which was pretty grueling, but it paid off. And then from there I left to go to University of Virginia to get a master's in sports psychology, which kind of tied those two things together.
So that fifth year, did you coach at Dakota? Were you a coach and finishing your school?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay. So then the move from there, you go to UVA. You basically went, in essence, not for a coaching job. You went to go to that graduate program.
It was a little bit of both. So the year after I graduated, or would have graduated. So the year after I was done playing, so it's
Yeah.
summer of 2002. So my coaching mentor, Scott Gines,
Oh, I remember Scott Gines. Yes.
yeah, so Scott
Yep.
had been, Radford, VMI, but he had gone in with Dennis Womack at the University of Virginia on what they called the Best in Virginia
I
camps.
remember it.
Yep. And so at the time, those were the thing, man. So if you worked those, you were gonna be rubbing shoulders with 50 to 75 coaches for a week. And he said you can either coach summer baseball to get into coaching, or you can start working camps to start meeting people. And he's like, you don't really want to coach summer ball unless somebody asks you to do it, like
Right.
unless because then it might not work out for you. So he set me up with contacts that first summer, and I started in Birmingham, Alabama, and I did Birmingham Southern, Mississippi State. I did a camp in North Carolina. I did Clemson. I did William and Mary, coincidentally enough. I did Bucknell. I did Best in Virginia. And then I picked up another couple camps. So I did, I think, total of 11 camps. And I just went from like camp stop to camp stop, meeting people. And to this day, some of my best friends in coaching I met that summer.
Wow.
And the summers after that at the Best of Virginia camp. So coming out there a couple years, like I met Coach Womack. I visited UVA and I was like, well, this is where, like this is where I want to go. I got into two schools. One was UVA and one was Tennessee. Those were the two grad programs I got into. And so um I went there with like he's like, Rob, I have a volunteer, I have a full staff. But if something changes and you're here, then that would be a great transition. So I
Right.
was, well, I'm gonna take that shot. And so I go there, and then that summer is the year that he stepped down and was replaced by O'Connor. So my first couple years at Virginia were O'Connor's first couple years at Virginia.
Now, I know the next move for you was James Madison, correct?
Nope, nope. Charlottesville High School JV.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yep.
No,
Okay.
we won one game in 2 years. Chad Prather was the head coach the first year, and then the assistant coach. We just flip-flopped. He was a he was the bullpen catcher back in the day at UVA.
Yep.
And we won one game in 2 years, and it felt like we won the World Series because we were dealing with the Charlottesville inner city kids. But anyway, I digress. Yes. Then I went to JMU after that.
And what year was it that you were at James? When did you start there?
05, 06.
Okay. And who was coaching then?
Spanky McFarland was the
Spanky
head coach
McFarland.
there.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
you stayed at there for how long?
Just a year.
Okay.
I was there a year, and like I think young coaches, the one thing I'll say is like again, just bet on yourself. I was there and really wasn't responsible for anything. I got to throw BP and work with kids and whatever, but I didn't get to plan or create anything. And
Right.
and for me, good thing about me is like I like learning the hard way. The bad thing about me is I like learning the hard way.
Right.
So
I get it. Yep.
um I wasn't going to learn anything the hard way what I was doing. So after that year, I had two opportunities. I could go be a junior college coach in Alabama for room and board and a stipend, with the promise to step into the head coach job 3 years later, or I could go to Niagara for $4,000 and no room, no board, no nothing. So naturally, I chose to stay at the Division I level and go to Niagara. Um, and I did. I mean, I cut my teeth. I messed up a lot as an assistant coach. But I kept learning. I kept trying to. Yeah, I went to the ABC. I've been a member of the ABCA since 2002. And so I, go to that and try to learn as much as I could and take it back. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. You can't, it's tough to go mid-year and be like, hey guys, this is what we're doing now,
Yes.
which
Yes.
I'm guilty of.
Yep.
But you kind of just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And so I was able to really, create some philosophies and things around coaching during that time. And then I was there 2.5 years. In the middle of the third year, the head coach was let go, and I was given the interim job for the spring of 2009, and then got the job after that year, and then had it for the next 16 years.
So let's talk about this first of all, which is obviously we can get to the coaching piece, but you're a guy from the West Coast in essence. Of course, it's Eastern Oregon, but
Mhm.
then you go to school in the Dakotas, right? And then now you're down in the Virginia area. Was this your first ever experience going to Northern New York? Like, what was that like? Do you remember going, whoa, it's cool, but I'm sure it was a very different lifestyle. So what do you remember about first getting up there?
Yeah, it's interesting because where I grew up in Eastern Oregon was cold and snowy in the wintertime, and then South Dakota obviously is too. So I remember getting down to Virginia, and the first November I'm down there, where UVA is playing Tech on November 3rd, and it's 73 degrees, and I
Right.
was like, this doesn't even feel right. Like
Right.
it's supposed to be snow on the ground right now. So I remember saying I'm never moving north of the Mason-Dixon line again. And then I did. And then I was there for the next 18 years. But same thing, like I talked to the coach the head coach on the phone. He offered me the job. He said it was Friday. He said, "When can you be here?" I said, "I'll be there Monday." I've just always been that type. Like, so when I don't know, it's good and bad because I encounter some young assistant coaches or guys trying to get into it, and I'm like, well, what are you willing to do to get it done? Like, and if you're not, you're talking to the wrong guy because I was fortunate that I had backing of my family to be able to do certain things, but I also took chances that a lot of guys would take. So I packed my stuff in my truck, what I could take, and I drove up there in a matter of 3 days. I moved into the apartment and started working. So um, when I got up there, it's the first time I'd been up there. My drive up there was the first time I'd ever seen it.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. I drove up 15, and got to, whatever it is, 390, and then went to 63 through Batavia and took a left on the 90 and ended up in Buffalo, New York. So it was it was it's just like anything. I'm like, wow, it's new, it's interesting. And then, there's some good winners and there's some bad winners, and there were some times where I was like, what am I doing here? And all the things that you could imagine thinking, those went through my head in all those years.
It's funny because, most of my coaching career was in Connecticut, and I happen to love the winter. But when you're a baseball coach, the winter is not exactly your friend when you're playing games, especially after you come off a southern trip where you've been somewhere warm,
Yeah.
and then you come back to the start of your home season and it's cold. But let's talk about when you took over the program. Obviously, you must have, as you said, you learned a lot. You're a lifelong learner, but was it a huge transition to get that first head coaching job to kind of take over this program in that role your first time in your life?
Yeah, I mean, you'll one thing about me, you'll know I'm pretty honest to a fault. Like I'll tell you straight up, I thought I knew way more than I did at that point. And the first couple years were okay because anytime you change staffs, you get sort of that bump in, especially when an assistant takes over because assistant coach, I tell assistant coaches all the time, like, you guys are the smartest coaches out there because none of your decisions get criticized or affect the team in the
It's
grand
true.
scheme of things. So, um, I could step back as an assistant and look at where all the things that were going wrong and going right were, and I could step in and immediately change those. And
Yes.
so when you do that, you get that morale bump. But then after a couple of years, like the rubber meets the road. So the third, fourth, fifth years were awful, like really awful. Good kids, not their fault. I wish there's sometimes I think back and I wish those guys that played for me back then could have played for me from 2000 to 2004, or even 17 to 2004. Like,
Right.
so anyway, we learned things the hard way. I learned things the hard way, and then you just to the point where I'm not sure. I kept trying to. Were you at Sacred Heart in like when we came there in 20?
Yeah. So I was about to say to you, we've definitely played against each other because that was back when it was at Harbor Yard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I was there at that time. Correct.
So I'll give you. Okay, perfect. So this is a perfect example of like our team was awful. You guys smoked us. But I had guys, literally seniors on that team because we had our bye weekend was the last week of the season. And so but I had five players basically tell me, I'm not going on the trip. Uh, well, I'm done. Like we're terrible. The conference is over. We're not in the tournament. And they just left.
Mm.
So it was bad. It was really bad. And and again, I'll say it wasn't their fault. When I look back on those times now, I've always taken full responsibility and accountability for what happens in my programs and
Smart.
success or failure. And so, it's not their fault. I look back and I'm like, I put them in that situation. So, um, that's how it started. So yeah, to answer your question, the transition looked a lot better at the beginning than it should have. And then it took, let's see, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, till about 2015 to where I realized something's got to change. Like I'm not gonna I'm responsible for this and I need to figure out how to change it.
So that's a perfect time for me to ask you. Obviously, the program started to really do well. I mean, 2024, you had an insane season. Was it something in the staffing, the program, the way you ran things? What got the program going in the direction that you wanted it to?
Yeah, so I've always been a huge believer in the mental game and culture and things like that, but I really just couldn't. I had lost the ability to do it myself
Mm,
because you get to a
interesting.
point where, as a parent, think about when you're a parent and over the course of years, you just lose the ability to really impact sometimes what your kids think because, they're like, yeah, you tell me this stuff all the time.
Right. That's fair.
So, um, So in 2015 or after in the spring of 14, we just got beat pretty bad somewhere, I forget, but we were on the bus and I'd been kicking around the idea of there's a guy, I'm sure you're aware of him. He's popular in the baseball world, but his name's Brian Kane.
Yep.
Um, and so I'd always connected with him pretty good because he'd spoke at the ABCA and everything. And the stuff that he would speak about and his energy that he would bring was kind of attractive to me. And I for a couple of years, but I even talked to him a couple of times, but make the excuse that, hey, I don't have the money and this and that. And then finally I was like, I don't care how much money it costs. It's either going to cost me money or it's going to cost me my job.
Right.
So we end up bringing him in the fall of 15 and I had the right group, which I did know that I had the right group to bring them in. And he came in and he basically presented all this stuff that we should be doing. And by doing that, showed
Mm,
I basically had to sit there and the way it felt to me was I had to sit there and listen to him tell my team all the ways we've gone wrong. And uh, I guess to my credit, I did. I wore it. And then in the next practice, I said that's like just like you guys have to take a step back and wear it, so do I. And this is the way forward. And so it was culture stuff, it was defining core values, it was like time management, it was everything that I still do to this day that I
wow.
think I think transcends culture. I talk to coaches sometimes and they're impressed with how definitive we are with it. And it was tough, I'll tell you, because I had tried stuff before, man. Like it wasn't, this was a test for me of me believing in it because we had tried stuff before and to the point where our players were, at some points were like, Coach, what new thing are we going to do this year?
Right.
And so long story short, that spring of 16 was not any better. We were 16 and 38 or something like that. But two two things that I remember distinctly from that year. I remember being like halfway to or two-thirds of the way through the season and getting to a point where we had just had a pretty crushing loss and trying to tell the team that don't focus on the scoreboard, like focus on the process, have the next quality at bat, win the next pitch. And then we got beat. And I remember looking at the scoreboard and thinking, man, I don't know if this is going to work, man. This is like, they're not responding, etc. So then, but then I told myself, I'm like, nope, just keep saying it, even if you don't believe it. And so I did. I kept saying it, and I didn't believe it. But after a while, like I had to remind myself every day before practice to keep pounding the rock, the mantra, brainwash myself. And then at the end of the year, we were no better. But it was the first time in the end of the year meetings that I had multiple players tell me they can't wait to get back
Mm,
and start in the fall. And that's when I knew. That's when I was like, okay, we created something that guys are excited about and want to come and continue working. And because, for years, you'd have end of year meetings. You could barely get the kids to meet with you because they're like, I'm out, man. Hopefully I can play better baseball in the summer. And it hurt. Like that hurt me. I always took that personally because I'm like, man, like that would be terrible. I wouldn't want to play for a guy like that created that environment. And so um, I'll never forget it. The guys that were excited to say, Coach, we can't wait to get back in the fall and start this. And that's when I knew that this is when this was going to happen. And then we got a pretty good recruiting class that year, and in 17 we went 500. We beat, we played Baylor tough. We swept Norfolk State. We went to the Virginia tournament and went 3-1 in the UVA tournament against LaSalle and UVA. We were UVA's only non-conference loss all year
Wow.
in 2017 that wasn't in the College World Series.
Wow.
And so then in 18, we made the tournament for the first time in 12 years. In 19, we reloaded. We lost a bunch of those recruits and a bunch of those guys that got us where we got to. Uh, 2020 helped with COVID. Believe it or not, it helped us continue to build and recruit. And then 21 through 24 speaks for itself. It just was a continual climb with culture and recruiting. And the coolest part of changing our culture was that I felt like I had the confidence to sit down in front of a player and his family in a recruiting talk and say, this isn't for everyone. Like,
Mm.
I'm not begging you to come here. In fact, I'm going to try to talk you out of it because what you're going to do is so hard that, you know, not everybody can do it. And so if you can't do it, just say no. And after that, we started getting the guys that were serious ball players, that were serious people, serious students, serious ball players, because I wasn't, like I wasn't compromising my integrity and my values to get a good player on the team anymore.
I
Um,
mean, what you just said in those past minutes, I mean, that's really impactful in a number of ways. And I even tell these high school kids who, the world knows how to lift weights these days. People know how to throw plyo balls and hit off machines and do all this stuff. But I think your average kid in high school is just completely ignoring the mental game, whether it's listening to podcasts like this, reading books, following. It's a place where they just don't give enough attention. So hopefully, kids that are listening to this, parents realize that that's a place you can really take your game to the next level. And then, just like you said, as a program, to hear the turnaround that it led to. But I think what I hear about you, and we seem alike in this way, is that like you're trying to make better people too. And like this is leading to you coaching human beings better as opposed to just winning games. Of course, winning games are part of it. And this is something maybe after they graduate and go on and live their lives, they remember a lot of the stuff that was through what Brian Kane taught you and the team. And that to me, ultimately, that's what a coach's job is. So I think that's really, impactful. It was really well said.
yeah,
Yeah, good.
it has been incredibly impactful. In fact, I have guys that contact me that said, "Hey, I use the core values, to get a job, or I used my breathing routine to do a job interview." Um, and that matters to me because like, listen, I'm not holier than thou. Like, I'm trying to develop young men and good fathers and husbands and sons, etc. But we're trying to win
Of
baseball
course.
games too.
Of
And
course.
this wins games by taking care of all the other stuff and the other stuff that distracts. Like, you have decisions that you have to make on a daily basis throughout your day as a college student. And the only way you're going to make those decisions right is if you have the team in mind, if you have your future in mind, if you see our vision for something greater than yourself. uh those are the things that help kids make the right decisions. If you have no structure and you have nowhere to go, then the kid is going to make whatever decision benefits the kid.
Mm.
And that's not always in college what you want kids focused on. So yes, it teaches kids to think about things aside from themselves, especially in today's day and age where it's getting harder and harder for us to focus on the team and our families and things like that, in addition to what's best for each individual guy.
Yeah, and the other thing you that resonated too, which was you talking about recruiting and basically saying this is what we're about. It may not fit this may not be
Mhm.
right. What a change in the way you go about recruiting as opposed to feeling like you're begging kids to come. You're now saying, "Hey, this is what we got. It may not be for you. You only want to pick this if you're all in." That's a huge change in the way you go about recruiting for sure.
I mean, it's changed everything. It's one of those things where I can sit there with a genuine like with a genuine conversation and tell a kid, if be honest with yourself about if you want this stuff. Do you want me to talk to you and make you have a breathing routine while you're competing? Do you want to do your 168 where you schedule every hour of your week and then we're going to meet once every week or two to hold you accountable to that? Do you want to make a growth plan and outline your goals? Because then you know that you're going to get held to that standard that you set for yourself. Because if you don't come here. And but then on the other side of that, if you do, in a year or two or three, however long it takes us, you're going to be surrounded by guys that wanted exactly what you wanted. And there's not going to be a distraction from a guy here or there who is like taking you in the wrong direction. Like
Got it.
all of these guys that decide to come here will will be cut from the same cloth. And if they're not, they'll stand out like a sore thumb and our culture will expose them and then we obviously will make decisions from there. But my whole goal is to get like-minded individuals into this program or into the program I'm in because when you do that, the sky's the limit on that one.
Totally, totally. Obviously, now you take the job at William and Mary. I'm lucky enough to have been able to go to campus and to go to that area.
Mhm.
So, but by no stretch you have to convince me why that's a heck of a job. But for people,
Yeah.
for people who don't really know, everyone knows the name William and Mary, but many
Mhm.
people maybe have not been to campus. Can you just talk about before we even get into the baseball piece, what kind of awesome university and area that the school is in?
Yeah, I mean it's a great area. Sort of southeast Virginia, the Virginia Peninsula. And so obviously the weather is an advantage for me coming from Niagara.
Yep.
But the school supports athletics, but also is, a top 30 school in the country. So, it's possible to do both, right? Like you can dream of doing both and being excellent at both, and that's possibility here. So it was a very attractive opportunity for me because I'm cut from that cloth. I've always valued education. I've always valued excellence. And so to have an opportunity to come in here and coach players like this and recruit to this university was something I just couldn't pass up. And like I said, it was one of the first places that I got to visit. I got to do a camp at with Coach Farr and Coach Wheels way back when, and they had just built Plumeri, so it was brand new. And I've never forgotten how nice it was. And we came here in 2006 with JMU. And battled the good William and Mary team. That was back when the CA was mostly it was the Colonial and it was
Right.
mostly Virginia schools, which I do miss that. I do, I value the teams that we have in our league now, but I miss the VCUs and the Old Dominions and the JMUs and the George Masons in conference games, conference weekends. But
Right.
yeah, it was just an opportunity that it was the next step. I always thought, I didn't always, I only applied for one job in 16 years at Niagara.
Mm.
And it's not, I always felt like I told myself when I took the job in 2009, I'm not leaving here until I make this a winner. And I'm kind of stubborn. And so even though there was years there where I wasn't happy or satisfied with things, it just kept grinding. But I always in the back of my mind was like, I wonder, especially when we changed culture a little bit, I wonder if this will work somewhere else.
Mm.
If I just get to try, it would be kind of cool. Never expected to leave Niagara to have another head coaching job, but was fortunate enough to get contacted after 2024. We had an amazing group of players that the sky was the limit for those guys, and they provided things that happened at Niagara that have never happened before. And so that provided me this opportunity, which I am thankful. The uh, the department here wants to be successful in everything they do, and so I've enjoyed having the support that we have, the facilities that we have, you know, and not to mention if it's nothing more than maybe the conference games are like 3, 4 hours away instead of 7, 8, 9 hours away. That actually is a nice perk too. I can get home and it's still daylight on a Sunday night.
Let's honestly that's absolutely huge. I mean, it's huge. You're right. Yeah, coming from Niagara, right? Your away trips are crazy long trips, crazy long bus rides. Um,
Mhm.
Is there anything, can you point to one or two things that are really different at this university from the baseball program? I mean, obviously the weather would be one, but clearly you guys have a nice facility. You also have a baseball only, at least the last time I was there, right? It's a baseball only hitting indoor facility right next to the field, which is got to be really fantastic to have
Mhm.
when the weather's bad, right? So that's something I'm assuming you didn't have access to at Niagara, correct?
Yeah. No, we had an indoor, but not like that. No. Not one, I wouldn't say there's like things that I'll say this. There's stuff everywhere you go. Like there's good stuff, there's bad stuff, there's stuff.
Yeah.
So, I enjoy what I'm enjoying now is just different stuff. We do have access to that, which is really cool. And I do think it helps players. And it's tough because if I start comparing William and Mary to Niagara, and I'm gonna jam Spatty up because he's I'm not gonna open up the hood of that car. But I think I think we and slash he this year have been able to find a niche at Niagara that I think is just a phenomenal situation for a lot of kids. And I think William and Mary has a phenomenal situation for a different type of kid. And and there's different issues and different things. But the new things, like just trying to sell tickets, we're revenue generating. So just the idea behind, having an attractive product to sell tickets so people will come to the games and then that helps us be successful, things like that. Uh, you know, uh, I will say that a lot more people reach out to us to get recruited than up there. So
Right.
sifting through that stuff and trying to figure out who fits and all that stuff has probably been the biggest challenge so far is finding an organized way to do that. And so that's why I don't leave my read receipts on my text. But yeah, like it's all different kind of challenges, but I would say that the weather is definitely a nice thing for me and being in a program and the family, and then just having a full coaching staff, which I'm still admittedly trying to navigate. We have three wonderful assistant coaches, and we've had some GAs and some guys stick around and do some things, some operation stuff. But this is coming from a guy who did all that stuff
Right.
by himself,
Right.
and number one, at a place like this, it's just not possible. There's too many hoops to jump through. There's too many things to go through. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Plus, they need to have something to do. So I'm
Right.
learning.
To
I'm
delegate,
learning.
right?
I'm learning delegation.
Yeah.
It's going slower than I thought, just because I don't. I've just never been the type of guy to be like, here, do this, do this, do this.
Right.
I'll just do it. But I just can't here.
No, that makes sense. That is something new, right? Yeah. Yeah. Previously, if something needed to get done, you knew how to get it done and you
Just
would
did
do
it.
it. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
it's right. Let's a couple more questions. Let's talk a little more recruiting. Um, I agree. I enjoyed the process when I was coaching of evaluating players, of running camps, of meeting kids and families. But I was always a little bit overwhelmed with like the big outreach and just the thousands of people. It was like really difficult to navigate all that. So I guess my first question is, how do you, like, if you think about current kids in the team now, how did you go about, not what you were looking for, how did these kids come on to your radar screen? Was it these kids come to camp? Was it, hey, you follow certain teams, you have certain connections? Is there like the top two or three things that you go about to find players for the program?
Yeah, I think the team is made up. All of our recruits are made up of a variety of different things. Number one, we have a really good coaching network here in Virginia. We have a couple, three, four, five really good travel programs with very capable coaches and recruiting coordinators, I guess you could say, with those organizations that do a good job of keeping us updated on kids and giving and like opening, sort of opening doors for us there.
Yep.
So we try to sit on those teams in Virginia. And one of the things I wanted to do coming down here was many people don't know this, but William and Mary is a state school.
Right.
So
Right.
so we're in state and it's significantly more advantageous for us to not only recruit from a financial perspective, but also because it's more of a name brand here in Virginia as well.
Right.
So, getting out and seeing the Virginia kids and making sure that we're doing our due diligence with them is a top priority. And so that has been one thing that we've sat on some of those teams and it was kind of cool. I actually have more connections from my time 20 years ago in Virginia than I thought. And so
Right.
like, we just committed a kid in 2027 that, I had to connect that I met the guy 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Um, and so that's kind of been kind of cool for me. So that's one way. The other way is we run our camps. Our camps aren't big, and we run a lot of them just to kind of be, I guess, as flexible and fluid as we can. And we've probably committed 7 or 8 kids, either by them showing up or personal invites to our
Right.
camps.
Yep.
You know, there's a thing that it's started to be a little pervasive, which I get because at Niagara I would do this, but like at Niagara, I would sign a kid off of a video and a recommendation.
Mm.
And I don't really feel like we need to do that here. So I want to be a little bit more sure because we've really value graduation rate and getting the right kids in. So we'd like to see them, but you'll have kids from Texas or California email you that they're interested, and then you invite them to a camp so you can see them in person. And they say, no, it's too far, it's too complicated. And it's like, well, imagine being a student here and
Right.
having to get
Right.
back and forth. Like, the thing too is the other thing kids don't realize is that there are a million recruiting events now, and there's still only 4 guys that can be out on the road from any team. So,
Right.
or 3 or whatever the rule is. Don't quote me on that.
Well, I
But
think there's probably 4 recruiters and 3 could be out at once or something
yeah,
like
that's what
that.
it is, right?
Right.
3
Right.
can be at once.
Yeah.
So you have I mean, you and a lot of these events you can't cover with one guy. So like you go to
No,
Georgia with one guy and you're dead
forget
in the
it.
water.
Yeah.
So we can't go everywhere and see guys. So a huge recruiting tool for us is for you to show that William and Mary is important enough to you if you're going to email us that you're going to come to camp and show us what you can do. So that is a big thing. Like I'd be lying if I didn't say a kid that comes to camp versus a kid that looks exactly like him that wouldn't.
Of course. It's human
Which one
nature.
would choose? Right.
Of course.
So there's that. There's also recommendations and things that we do old school where we gather recommendations and try to go see those kids at the events that we go to. We check them off the list and say,
Yeah.
okay, like these organizations up in the Northeast, which we also are a good match with, like hey, they're playing here in the Boston Open. We're going to go up there and we're going to bebop around and do that kind of thing. So that's also a way to do it. So the other thing too is portal. We can still dabble in the portal, even having high academic standards. And so a lot of that is, that's a lot of stats and synergy because we
Yes.
can
Yeah.
synergy video on everybody and we can see the kids' stats. And if we know what league they're coming from, we know sort of how good a player they are. So we've had some success there too. So it's kind of everything. And I think for me, the biggest thing is that I let my assistants go out and gather, and I do too from my contacts and things like that. But then we come back in, and it's important to just have a high standard to what you're looking for. And you have to stay true to yourself. So all the noise comes in from all the people and all the kids. And I've tried to do my best to communicate with the coaches that contact us or the kids that contact us. Like, if you contact me, I'm going to give you an honest answer. So as long as you can take an honest answer, then like just keep sending me kids. It might be no, 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 but then it might be yes, I like that kid a lot. If a kid contacts me, and I don't think he's a fit, I'm going to just say it. So I'm not going to have time to get in a conversation with the kid about why he's not a fit, but
Right.
but at least he's not going to be left on red,
Right.
for the most part. So that's what we're trying to do is just be true to everybody, but also be true to ourselves and what we're looking for and what the expectations are here.
So, kind of the final question, and that was, by the way, really well explained. You know, is there anything in particular from recruits that you're looking for? that might not be the standard thing. I mean, I think if we
Mhm.
put 20 baseball coaches looking at, everyone wants some physicality, some speed, good hands, some velo, the ability to command, et cetera. But is there, and clearly at William and Mary, the kid's got to be an excellent student, or that's going to be a problem. And you may have this answer, maybe no. I'm looking for what everyone else is. But is there anything particular to you or William and Mary that you're looking for? It's a, hey, the kid has to have this speed, or he needs to have. Is there anything you particularly look for, or if they don't have, we'll stop the process?
Yeah. I would say I'll try to answer this in the most helpful way possible because I feel like I have to say no a lot to a lot of kids that someone might say, really? Like this kid can do this, but he can't play for you. And I think my answer to that is just overall like athleticism, not like you can squat whatever 100 pounds or you can lift this, but do you move? Are you free flowing when you move? Do you do things with ease? Like yeah, you're 89, which is fantastic, but don't let anybody tell you 88, 89 is not going to play.
Right.
But do you do it easy? Because if you do it easy, I mean, I'm working off 20 years of projection experience. Like I've seen what gets better and what doesn't. And so I think if the biggest reason I would say yes or no would be how easy does he do everything else that all those other guys do?
It's a great point.
I think that's kind of sometimes lost on kids because of they hit the metrics that everyone says they have to hit, but then they get told no. And I would say it's the ease with which somebody does what everyone else does. I think that would be how I would say it.
Yeah, and
Which
here's the,
doesn't, it's not a ton of clarity. I get that, but at the same time, maybe it'll, make sense to
well,
people.
yeah, but that's why the process is hard, and that's why, if you will, I'm in business. I've had 8 coaches go watch a guy throw a game, a starter pitching, and I've had 2 guys say, "No, thanks, not interested." 2 guys go, "Hey, if he cleans up the breaking ball," and the other 3 go, "When can we get him to campus?"
Right.
That's the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So
Right.
that's the way it's always going to be, and it's not a
Yeah.
science. And you're right. Even though you can get to these metrics are just the first piece of the puzzle. It's so many other things, how they play, but just as you said, how they look. But Rob, this was awesome. So, really appreciate during a busy time that you took the time to connect with me. And as we've texted many times, I promise that I will follow up on this. That when I go see my son in Newport News at Christopher Newport, my wife and I love Williamsburg. It's where we always go out,
Yeah.
bring the dog. So I promise that I will come see you sooner than later, and we'll go have an adult beverage or go do something together there.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
All right, man. I appreciate your time so much. Thank you, buddy.
absolutely. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you again so much, everybody, for joining today's episode, for listening or watching. We really appreciate it. Again, we had Rob McCoy, the head baseball coach from William and Mary. I'm your host, Wayne Mazzoni. For more information about my recruiting business, please visit collegebaseballadvisor.com. And also thank you to our sponsor, the World Baseball Coaches Convention, run every year, January 15th to 17th, 2026 at the Mohegan Sun Casino. It's one of the best events. I've gone to it 20 plus years. If you go to baseballcoachesclinic.com, you will see the list of speakers, the schedule when it is released, the vendors, the venue. It's a really awesome event to kind of get your juices flowing about baseball and network and have a good time at a great venue. So thank you again for listening. Our upcoming podcasts as scheduled this time are the longtime head baseball coach at Clemson, Jack Leggett. And then the following one will be Jim Martin, the new head coach at Stony Brook. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon.